Hey guys, Leslie here from the 14 Acres. I'm going to take y'all along today for a little bit of an overview of our coops, our chicken yards, our runs, our brooder setup. Really just an overview of the housing setup that we have for all of our birds here at the 14 Acres. We are blessed to live on this amazing piece of land. The majority of our property is wooded. We do have a couple of acres that are pasture, and the rest is heavily wooded. We have a creek that runs through the property. So the challenges that come along with that are we have a lot of predators. We have the creek draws a lot of mammals and things that are looking for water. We've had issues with bobcats, fox, coyotes, and then we also have aerial predators, the main of which is red-tailed hawks. We have some large red-tailed hawks that nest over our creek up in these big tall trees. And so a lot of what we have set up in the chicken yards and in the coops is, you know, geared towards keeping birds. Thank you, Turkey. Turkey just shook dirt all over me. Geared towards giving the chickens plenty of safe places to hide out in the big open chicken yards. We use a lot of fallen branches and maybe low cedar branches that Paul trims. We use all of those for just, you know, structures, but also just as little hiding spots for the chickens. So come along today. I'm going to show y'all around and let's get started. So these were the two initial runs that we started with. Paul added this top structure, so we did not have a livestock guardian dog at the time. Aviary netting was a must for us at first before we had livestock guardian dogs. So Paul added this upper structure just to have something to connect the aviary netting to. This is the first coop that Paul, my husband, and our son-in-law Neil built. This was a falling apart kids playhouse structure that was here on the property. This is the upper part of it, it's like a kid's play set with a slide. So still, really good wood. They were able to reconfigure this and make it adequate for a coop for our first group of chickens. I know there are some I have juveniles in here right now in this run, grow outs. And I know there are some young girls, some young pullets in there laying eggs, so I'm not going to show inside that coop this time. We have nest boxes here that they added to the end. It has this corrugated roofing, a little door on the side. It is elevated. We sort of turned this into dry space where they could get, in rain, that sort of thing. But the runs are nice and long, and there were two identical ones here side by side. We also then separated some areas at the end of each run, and I'll show you this one. This one down here we've never really done anything with. It is an enclosure. It does not have a coop in it, but we can isolate birds if we need to in there. And then this area on the end of this run is actually our brooder area, and I'll show you that as well. And Turkey wants to say, they're so nosy, so inquisitive. So these two runs are just connected with this gate. Then this is the other coop that Paul and Neil built, and this also was part of this was a kids play structure. You can see this is actually the little door that was on the play structure. So we just reused everything absolutely that we can. After we lived with this first coop for a while, and then, you know, because of chicken math, we soon after needed another coop. I knew that there were some major mistakes that we made with this coop being our first that we did not want to repeat with the second. And the main thing is that this one is hard to clean. It's hard to rake out. We have a small door on this side and then a pop door that goes up and down on the end, and it is very hard to rake out the corners and stuff. So when they were building the second coop, I knew that I needed it to be easier to clean because I really dreaded cleaning that one. So I knew I wanted a big wide door or gate on one end where I could just reach in and rake it out. So that's what we did on the second one. So on this coop, we built this wide gate on this end. Of course, there's still roost bars in here, but now on this, I can just reach in with a dirt rake all this out. So we do a little bit of a deep litter method. We use pine shavings, which are great at absorbing odors. Every couple of weeks, we add a few extra to the top. The chickens scratch it in, and it just sort of re-energizes those shavings and freshens things up a bit. And then only once every few months, really, do I come in and rake all of this out. That gets transferred either to compost or directly to my garden beds. Ventilation is important in coops. Even if you are in cold weather, you have to have good ventilation just in order for, you know, the humidity, in order for the fumes, everything to not be trapped in there with the birds. So we do have these windows that are covered in hardware cloth. The ramp is on this end, and that's how the chickens get in and out at night. And this door locks here. We use these two separate runs and separate coops to isolate different flocks, different roosters, whether that is a group that I'm intentionally trying to breed with certain roosters or whether it is just to keep roosters separate. Right now we're using this side as a grow out / juvenile. These are all spring birds. In the back of this left side of the run, we added this probably the second year, or maybe it was later in that first year. The first time I started hatching, which was not too long after we got our first chickens, I knew I needed an outdoor brooder to be able to transition birds outside after they've been raised, you know, indoors under heat. So this has been just absolutely perfect for that. We use it for lots of different things. It is in the back of this run with a gate between it. And then all of this expanse out here is the newest addition in the last year, this huge chicken yard that connects everything. But we absolutely love this brooder area for integrating new flock members using that look but don't touch method, where there is a fence separating the turkeys are just, they're going to follow me everywhere. But with a fence separating them, it is a good way to integrate flocks and keep them all safe at the same time. When I have a broody hen that I have decided I'm gonna let brood, whether that's with shipped eggs or I have just, you know, some certain eggs from my flock that I am wanting her to hatch, this is where we do that. So if I have a hen that is in a nest box in the barn or in one of these coops and she is sitting on just, you know, random eggs, The first thing I want to do is make sure she's committed. So before I give her any expensive eggs, shipped eggs, high dollar eggs, or eggs that I really care about, I will move her to this brooder, get it all set up with her own food and water, and just give her a couple of eggs from the flock, just what we just would call our eating eggs. Occasionally, if a broody is not really committed, just moving her like that breaks her. So I would never recommend moving and giving, you know, good hatching eggs at the same time. So what I personally do is move her, give her just some dummy eggs for a couple of days, see if she is still committed to being broody, and if she is, then I'm gonna go and exchange her eggs for the hatching eggs. She will typically make a little nest in the back corner of this brooder. I will close these gates. I will leave the brooder box open so she has her own little run to get out safely, you know, do her business, eat, drink, and then right back on the box. The beauty of this little brooder, and I know, you know, a lot of people aren't fortunate enough to have a extra space like that with a coop, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you have a little section in your chicken run or chicken yard that you could fence off even just with some hardware cloth or with a baby gate, and then set up a dog crate or something for the broody with her eggs. I like to get them moved long before they hatch. I see people often letting broody hens hatch eggs, hatch chicks in their barn with the rest of the flock, and I know people personally who've had success doing that. It worries me. I don't want to take a chance, well, with any life, but especially if it's with hatching eggs that I really care about or I've spent a lot of money on. I don't want to take the chance of another hen hurting those eggs or hurting the chicks or a rooster. So I like to get her isolated, get her set up, make sure she is committed, and then give her those good eggs. This is our latest big addition that Paul built for me this summer, and I absolutely love it. So we just call this the chicken yard. This connects the barn coop, the barn run, which I'll show you that in a minute, to the main coops. So this is where Juno sleeps at night. We leave these gates open. She has access to all of the coops, and she patrols this whole area at night. Paul used these fence panels from Tractor Supply. These are 16-foot long panels. They are 5 feet wide, so of course that's what we're using as the height here. So 16 feet long, 5 feet tall, 4x4 openings. The silkies and young juveniles can go through this. So this is definitely not fencing that we would use in the brooder or anywhere that we're going to be raising babies, but it's great for adult birds. All of these areas are connected with gates. When we don't have birds isolated in what we call the brooder run, then all the gates stay open. That way Juno has access to everything. This is another one of our enclosures. We just call it the A-frame. This was built initially probably 7 years ago to house meat birds, jumbo Cornish cross that we raised out on pasture. It is made to be able to just be dragged around with the Ranger or tractor, that sort of thing. Now it is just out here in this chicken yard, and it is again another enclosure. I'm a big fan of having multiple enclosures. Even if you are working on a smaller scale, a small flock, I think you need at least one additional enclosure. If you have an injured bird, if you have, you know, a sick bird, if you have a mama with babies, it's nice to just have another safe area to put them in, close them in, protect them from the rest of the flock. In the chicken yard, we like to provide lots of different roost spaces, places for birds to hide. Of course, this is not covered with, this is a huge area. There would be no way to cover this with any sort of aviary netting. This, we just call this the hoop house. It has a roost bar in it. They love to just hang out in here during the day. Actually, a red-tailed just swooped down a minute ago, so most of these birds are sort of on high alert. This hoop house was a super simple, you know, frame, and then you just put a cattle panel, stretch a cattle panel over the top to create the arch, and then it has a roost bar and a gate on one end. So to get the lay of the land here, there are the coops and the 2 runs over here. And then this main structure of this pole barn was here. This enclosure was not here. This was just an open pole barn when we bought the place. It was falling apart. So I'm doing that to get them away from this gate at the barn. So this is the enclosure that Paul built out of repurposed wood. It is dark in here. So multiple roost bars here, water feeders hanging, and roost bars back at the back. Nest boxes over there. And we call this the barn coop. This has a pop door on it. We used to have aviary netting out in this barnyard area, but now that Juno has access to all these yards all day and all night, she lives in the yard with these birds. If the birds are totally out in the pasture, foraging, totally free ranging, she is out there with them and keeping them safe. But you know, you can train your livestock guardian dogs to protect from overhead predators as well. And I did that without even really knowing I was doing it, but just by causing a ruckus when I would see a hawk, and when there would be a hawk in the barnyard, or see one swoop down, and me running, yelling at the hawk, clapping my hands, looking up. She learned really quickly what hawk means, and that she also needs to, you know, keep an eye to the sky. So she is absolutely great at that. So that's it, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this coop tour and the tour of our setup. If y'all have absolutely any questions about the coops, the nest boxes, any of the supplies or anything that we use, I'm happy to share that. So just drop me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed already, it would just mean the world to me if you would subscribe and follow along. Please interact, let me know who you are, and any at all questions, anything you'd like to see more of, let me know that as well. So for now, I'm going to sign out. I hope y'all have an amazing day, and thanks for being here. Bless y'all.